Just like Rube Goldberg, the incredible true story of the man behind the machines, written by Sarah Aronson, illustrated by Robert Newbaker. Question: how do you become a successful, award winning artist and famous inventor without ever inventing anything at all? This is not a trick question. A man named Rube Goldberg did it. In a funny way, his life was just like one of his famous inventions, an improbable and inefficient chain reaction that ends up making perfect sense. From the time he was a boy, Rube Goldberg loved to draw. And we're not just talking about simple stuff here. As early as 4 years old, Rube traced the cartoons he found in his books. At 11, he took official art classes from a sign painter. Rube might have been a quiet boy. He might have been shy. But he was determined to be a great cartoonist for a big time newspaper. Unfortunately, when he told his family, they were absolutely horrified, beyond dismayed. Rube's father, Max, had immigrated from Germany to America to give his family a chance for a better life. He didn't want his son to end up a beggar on the streets. So, to please his father, Rube went to the University of California, Berkeley, studied engineering, and after graduation, got a job with the City of San Francisco Department of Water and Sewers. It was a good job. It paid well. That could have been the end of the story, right? Wrong. Rube detested shoveling tunnels and mines, 2,000 feet underground. He didn't enjoy mapping sewer pipes either. And he wasn't very impressed with the city's government. Rube still wanted to draw comics for a big time newspaper. So, after 6 months, he quit engineering and started over. He got a job at the San Francisco Chronicle. For $8 a week, Rube emptied wastebaskets, cleaned the floors, and filed photographs in the document morgue. And whenever he had a chance, Rube drew and drew and drew. Day after day, Rube submitted his cartoons to the editor. Night after night, the editor mostly said no. When he said yes, Rube sometimes got paid, but other times he just got out of the office tasks he didn't like to do. After a year, Rube convinced the sports department of the San Francisco Bulletin to hire him, and after that, he was a little more successful. He developed his style. The paper ran his cartoons, a column too. This might have been the next end of the story, but then the ground shook, literally. The 1906 earthquake in San Francisco crumbled the city and left many people without jobs and homes. In the wake of disaster, it can be hard for people to focus on their dreams. It can be even harder to feel hopeful. But Rube didn't give up on his dream. Instead, he did the only thing he could do. He drew comics to cheer people up. And then he made a big decision. In 1906, there was only one place where a guy like Rube could really make it big. It was the place he called the Front Row, the cartoon capital of the country, New York City. So he got on a train and headed east. He didn't have much, $200 and a diamond ring. The ring was a gift from his father, just in case Rube needed to sell it to buy a ticket back home. After 12 days of pounding the pavement, lugging his art from newspaper to newspaper, Rube did it. He got a job as a cartoonist at a big-time paper, the New York Evening Mail. He had made it. Right off the bat, Rube became a celebrity. Readers couldn't wait to see what he had to say about all kinds of things, like sports and politics and the silliness of everyday life. But maybe more than anything else, everyone loved reading about Rube's alter ego, Professor Lucifer Gorgonzola Butz. The eccentric professor invented one intricate machine after another, and none of them were straightforward. In fact, they were the opposite of straightforward and often disregarded the laws of physics. Although this was the age when new machines were being invented to make life easier, Rube's screwball contraptions purposefully solved problems in the most surreal and ridiculous ways. Things like, how do you put holes in donuts? How do you turn off a light? Or even, how do you cut your own hair? Just like the machines he studied in engineering school, these complicated contraptions required lots and lots of parts. And they always worked, on paper, of course. They weren't practical in the real world, but that was never the point. Rube Goldberg didn't draw machines that solved real world problems. He drew comics to make us look closer and question logic and tickle the imagination. And because of that, these machines accomplished something astounding and more important than any pile of nuts and bolts ever could. They challenged people to use the most amazing machine in the universe, the brain. So, let's take it from the top. Rube Goldberg became a stubborn, smart, serious about being funny engineer, office boy, cartoonist, commentator, comic genius, and award winning artist and inventor whose name is now an adjective in the actual dictionary without inventing a thing. Is this kind of thing still possible? You bet it is. Figure out what you want. Work as hard as you can. And most of all, have a great time getting there. Just like Rube Goldberg. Got more questions about Rube Goldberg? Rube Goldberg was born on the 4th of July in 1883. His full name was Reuben Garrett Lucius Goldberg. He was a shy, serious boy with enormous ears. His parents were middle-class Jewish immigrants. His father, who originally thought that artists were not much more than beggars, eventually became his agent. When Rube studied at Berkeley, he drew cartoons for the Pelican, the student newspaper. From 1905 to 1936, Rube created more than 60 original cartoon series, including Foolish Questions, Mike and Ike, and Bobo Baxter. For I'm the Guy, he encouraged readers to send in suggestions that led to gags like, I'm the guy who put the sand in sandwich. His first invention cartoon was the simple mosquito exterminator, No Home Should Be Without It. It appeared on July 17, 1912. It was anything but simple. From 1912 to 1932, Rube created a new invention nearly every 2 weeks, and then somewhat less often until 1964. Each composition could take as many as 30 hours to finish. Rube said his contraptions were a symbol of man's capacity for exerting maximum effort to accomplish minimal results. The children's game Mousetrap was inspired by his inventions, and it actually worked. Rube loved cars. He acquired his first car, a Minerva, in 1910. He was one of the first people in New York City to own one. Rube did not shy away from politics and controversy. He traveled to Paris 4 days after the outbreak of World War I to observe what the Evening Mail called history at close range. He went to Europe in 1918 to cover the peace conferences. In 1939, he drew a contraption that made fun of Franklin Delano Roosevelt's New Deal. During World War II, he received angry mail and death threats, so he asked his sons to change their last name. Tom chose the name of George, which was a bit unfortunate since his brother's first name was George. Rube was known as the Dean of Cartoonists. In 1946, after touring the country with other cartoonists to entertain the troops, Rube helped found the National Cartoonist Society and was elected its first president. In 1967, the society awarded him its highest honor, his namesake, the Reuben. In 1980, he was posthumously awarded the National Cartoonist Society Gold Key. In 1995, the U.S. Postal Service made a stamp honoring Rube Goldberg inventions that depicted his self-operating napkin. In 1946, Rube received the Pulitzer Prize for his political cartoon Peace Today, which shows a house and family perched on top of a gigantic atomic bomb teetering between world control and world destruction. Rube didn't believe in retirement. During his life, he drew approximately 50,000 cartoons. At the age of 80, he even became a sculptor. Rube Goldberg died on December 7th, 1970. He was 87. Rube Goldberg wrote, You have to have courage to be a creator. His work continues to inspire classrooms, cartoonists, and artists around the world to think outside the lines.